I'd like the memory of me to be a happy one. I'd like to leave an afterglow of smiles when life is done. I'd like to leave an echo whispering softly down the ways of happy times and laughing times, of bright and sunny days. I'd like the tears of those who grieve to dry before the sun of happy memories that I leave when my life is done. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jenny Cadell, and I'm a civil celebrant who, along with the staff of Lapine Funerals, will assist you to make your way through this service to honour and to celebrate the life of a fun-loving lady who loved to have a good time, Jean Burney, whose life revolved around her family. They were her world. Due to the outbreak of COVID-19, we find ourselves in the midst of extraordinary times. The current challenges we face restricts the number of people able to gather here in the chapel. However, there are many others who are thinking of you and sending their support and condolences via our live stream service. And on behalf of Jean's family, I thank you and welcome you to our service. We are especially thinking of Jean's son Robert, who is in Queensland, Jean's sister Elsie in Mount Gambier, as well as Jean's granddaughter Tanya and her family in Swan Hill. Whilst you have all gathered today from different places and you may look at life in different ways, there is one thing you all have in common. At some point, and to some degree, your lives were touched by Jean, just as her life was touched by yours. And so this is an ideal time to acknowledge the contribution Jean made to your lives. By the very essence of who she was, Jean gave so much of herself to everyone fortunate to know her. Like all of us, Jean valued her independence and the freedom her independence provided her. She was happy living in her home in St Kilda, the only home she had known for 71 years. She was comfortable being surrounded by those things and people so familiar to her. But at 82 years of age, the effects of time and age were beginning to take their toll on Jean, and her memory was beginning to show signs of fading. It was around that time that Jean's middle child, her golden child, Tom, stopped work to care for Jean, enabling her to remain at home where she wanted to be until she passed away last Wednesday, the 14th of October. Jean was the adored and devoted mother and mother-in-law of Betty and Michael, Tom, Robert and Debbie, and she was a very proud nan to her grandchildren and their partners, Tanya and Paddo, Lisa and Jono, Jackie and Kevin, Jamie, Anthony, Stuart, Jeffrey, who sadly passed away as a baby, Narelle and Michael, Selena, Nicole and Naya, and Rebecca, and to her great-grandchildren, Matilda, known affectionately as Walsing to Jean, Mitchell, Asher, Jacob, Josh, Jono, Flynn, and Addie. And Jean is survived by her much-loved sister, Elsie. Jean's family believe she is now in a happy place as the brightest star in the night sky, with loved ones who have passed before her. And they also know that her memory will live on through those who knew and loved her so well. But Jean's family also understand that her influence will not end today. Her warmth, her generosity, and her values will continue to be a living part of everyone fortunate to know her. This ensures Jean is not just part of your past. Each of you carries something important of her with you into the future. In the ordinariness of her life, Jean was extraordinary. She led a simple life, and she appreciated the simple pleasures life afforded her. The word simple has been much maligned over the years, and what a shame. A simple person is humble, modest, and unpretentious, and Jean was all of those things and more. She was a giver, not a taker, and as long as she was surrounded by her family, especially the babies, then she was a happy woman. Jean's family was the focus of her life, and today they honour her. Jean Welsh was born at Essendon on the 5th of February 1931 to parents Horace and Ida. Jean was the second youngest of 6 children, and her siblings, Peter, Chummy, Mick and Joan, predeceased Jean and their now sole surviving sibling, Elsie. The Welsh family lived in Ascot Vale, and Jean and her siblings were educated at Ascot Vale Primary School. Like most young people back then, Jean left school at the age of 14, and she found a job as a postie with the Postal Service. She enjoyed her job, and she remained with the PMG until she and George were married in 1949. Jean was then just 18 years old and not used to being away from her family, and when she and George moved to St Kilda, Jean missed her family terribly. But she and George were grateful to George's father for enabling them to purchase their own home at 27 Marriott Street, St Kilda, and that became Jean's family home. It was here where Jean raised her 3 children, Betty, who was named after Jean's favourite doll. You were born in 1950. Tom, no secrets here. Tom was born in 1952, and Robert, who was born in 1954. For all her life, Jean loved children, babies in particular, and she was fulfilled in her role as wife and mother. She, though, was definitely not the disciplinarian in the Burney family. It was George who ruled the roost. Jean always trusted her children to do the right thing, and, well, at least Betty did that. When her children were young, Jean would take them to the beach on hot summer's days. Not after school when the heat was at its worst. No, she took them over to the beach for a swim at 6 o'clock in the morning because, well, Tom was so fair and she didn't want him getting burnt. At that stage, neither Jean nor George had their driver's licence, so every couple of months or so, they would walk with the children to Balaclava Station, a good 15-minute walk away, and take the train to Ascot Vale to visit the relatives. And those 4 years of riding a bike as a postie meant that Jean knew how to handle a push bike. And when Betty was school age, and Tom, perhaps you might have been ready for kinder, Jean would take all 3 children on her bike to school and kinder. So one child would be sitting in the dicky seat on the back of the bike, one would be on the rider's seat, and the other on the handlebars. It's true. Whilst it's true that Jean was a homebody, she was also a very friendly lady who loved to have people in her home. She and her friends would talk, tell jokes and laugh over endless cups of tea. And Jean never said a bad word about anyone, nor would she ever offend anyone. Living in St Kilda meant there was only ever one footy team for Jean to follow, and that was her mighty Sainters. She and George often took the children up Fitzroy Street to Junction Oval on a Saturday afternoon. But when St Kilda was playing George's team Carlton, well, they'd have to sit apart. Back in the 60s and 70s, it was a very popular pastime for housewives to collect and display teaspoons, and Jean had racks and racks of them. But now they'll be going to Paddo. In order to supplement George's wages, he was a storeman at Bell's Asbestos in Caulfield. Jean found work as a cleaner. She was chatting with a couple of mothers at the kindergarten one day when one of them asked Jean if she knew if anyone could clean her home and her doctor husband's surgery. Jean volunteered, and it must be said that she did have that job for quite a while before George found out. But Jean was able to complete her work while George was at work and the children were at school, and she became loved like a member of that doctor's family. But as long as Jean's family was happy, then so was she. She was in her 50s when she obtained her driver's licence, and she loved the freedom of having a car provided her. When her sister Elsie moved over to Mount Gambier, Jean would often drive over to see her, and she always looked forward to those times when Elsie came down to visit. As her children grew up and created independent lives of their own, Jean was happy for them and proud of them. Due to the effects of working for so many years in the asbestos factory, George's health suffered in his later years. He developed emphysema, and Jean cared for him at home as long as she was able to. And it was sadness for themselves, but relief for George that he was no longer suffering when he passed away in October 1999. Jean was grateful for the support of her family and friends, and she continued to devote her time and her energy to them. She looked forward to joining Betty and Michael and their family on holidays to Broadbeach on the Gold Coast, and she loved to be a part of the fun they were having. Jean was in her 60s on one of those holidays when she was keen to join in their activities, and she just laughed at all the fun they were having, even if it was at her expense sometimes. But that was the thing about Jean. She could laugh at herself and life. She had such a wonderful outlook on everything. And for holidays just a little tamer than the Gold Coast, Jean looked forward to joining Betty, Michael and their girls at Corowa, and also at their cabin in Nagambie, where Jean would chat with anyone and everyone. At home, Jean adopted dogs, sausage dogs. She loved both Mickey and Ozzy, and they were good company for her. She loved having them sit at her feet or on her lap. She liked to have them close by as she tackled the crossword puzzles in the newspaper and the weekly puzzle magazines, Take 5 and That's Life. And it was quite extraordinary to watch Jean complete those puzzles, which she was quick as a flash. She'd look at the clues and then know the answer straight away, filling it in. And so it's no wonder that she was so quick at answering the questions on her favourite quiz shows on the television. She also enjoyed documentaries on any subject that interested her, and she loved to watch any sporting telecast: football, golf, tennis, cricket, and racing. And then, as mentioned, time and age began to take their toll on Jean, and Tom became Jean's carer. Tom, you dedicated yourself to caring for your mum, and your devotion to her and her welfare ensured that she could remain at home, which was her one wish. It's difficult for anyone to fully understand just what you did in caring for Jean, but your sister Betty, your brother Robert, and their families are so grateful to you for everything that you did for your mum. Thank you. They are 2 small words, but they come to you with hearts filled with gratitude. Even as Jean's memory began to fade, she was able to maintain some independence, and she also accepted the care offered to her by the services from the council. She looked forward to the thrice-weekly bus trips arranged by Cora Graves and go to the Elstonwick pub for lunch, trips to the local beach or over to Williamstown. Jean also looked forward to her family coming to visit and going for a walk down the street for coffee and cake. Oh, Jean loved her cakes, especially those with cream, and really she lived in the perfect neighbourhood to satisfy her sweet tooth. And then Jean also began to spend time in respite each year, giving her and Tom a break. And Jean looked forward to her little holiday at Heritage Gardens in Bayswater, close to Betty and Michael. The staff there loved Jean. She didn't create a fuss. She was grateful for everything done and given to her, and she loved having so many people to chat with. She joined in all the activities and looked forward to visits from her family, especially her grandchildren. Jean loved her family, and she loved her life. In return, she was loved, and she will be missed. And whilst you are all in grief at Jean's passing, you are also thankful that for Jean, there is no more confusion. And as mentioned, as full of love as Jean's heart was for her children, it expanded even further with the arrival of her grandchildren. They gave her a new lease on life, and they became the light of her life. And then when her great-grandchildren were born, well, she was just besotted with each of them as well. Because grandparents, they provide their grandchildren with an abundance of love and attention. They offer grandchildren a window to their past heritage and a doorway to the possibilities of tomorrow. When grandparents are around, discipline goes out the window. As a grandmother, Jean had that amazing ability to make her grandchildren feel as though she had just been waiting for them to arrive, and then her day felt complete. Joan's granddaughters, Tanya, Lisa and Jackie, have prepared tributes to their Nan, and they have asked that I share those with you now. And following on will be Narelle, who will speak on behalf of her family, who can't join us today. And our tributes will close with Jean's son-in-law, Michael, who also has a couple of stories to share. So we'll start with Tanya. Tanya wrote, "My first childhood memories was staying with Nan. Lisa and I would squeeze into the double bed. Nan would have to sleep sideways so that we could all fit. Mickey, the sausage dog, would be under the blankets at our feet, and there was always a cat or two in there somewhere. Thank God Pop was skinny. Nan always had a love for animals. This was one of the best things she passed on to me. Oh, that, and of course the golden Gemini. How could I forget that? Now that got the boys running for me every time. Thanks, Nan." AJ remembers that there was a car door in the lounge room for a while, but only Nan had a driver's license. I suppose you just never know when you're going to need a car door. It goes without saying that Nan had a lot of friends. Everyone who travelled somewhere always brought back a spoon or two for the collection, and Nan was loved by all. Our childhood holidays often took us to Queensland, where one year Nan decided to join us. Us three girls never had enough room in the back seat anyway, so what was one more person squashed in the back seat for a few days? It was at Wet n Wild when Nan cut loose and followed all the kids down the water slide. Mum couldn't swim and Dad was probably too scared. So they waited with a few other friends at the bottom of the slide to watch us all come flying down. So we must have put Nan in the middle of the kids, because when I hit the water, there was Nan sitting on the bottom of the pool. Someone noticed that she was taking an awful long time to re-emerge and jumped up to pull her up. Her face was white, and once she caught her breath, she said, "I thought I was in a tunnel of water." Hence, Nan's water slide actions were finished. It also didn't take long, and the entire group who loved this lady put together actions and a little tune. Look at that genie go. We all point the finger to Maureen or Dad. It surely would have been one of them. It was another great holiday. Nan didn't drown, and we had such a laugh singing that song for most of the trip. In Nan's later years, she started to slow down a little. Mum and Nan came up to Swan Hill for a little getaway. Now, normal people, when they're burning off, generally do this in small sections, but not us. We have to have the biggest bonfire in town. So Nan wheeled herself over with her four-wheeler, took a seat, as we all did, and waited for the action. Well, action it was. The bonfire went up, and as it grew bigger, the two massive palm trees caught alight. Now with the fire above us and out of control, I started moving everyone back, while Pato and his brother grabs a garden hose, which actually didn't quite reach in the first place and didn't really do too much either. Anyway, here's Nan. She doesn't want to miss out on any of the action, and not wheeling very fast, probably due to the rough terrain. I'm saying, "Come on, Nan, move those legs." I'm feeling 100 degrees while gently pushing her on to move. Finally, we were out of harm's way. Nan sits down and enjoys watching the chaos, and the fire continued to burn, but thankfully only did minimal damage. Mum was there shaking her head, and now we are both laughing. Another memorable moment. And when the time came to leave my place, I said to Nan, "Well, Nan, you'll have to come back for the next bonfire." And her reply was, "What fire?" Clearly, it was a memorable moment for some. Now, our Nancy, she loved a crossword, a dirty joke, her cigarettes, even if they were fake in the end, dancing at our 21sts and weddings. I'm even sure there's a photo of Nan on Jono's shoulders on the dance floor somewhere. Nancy, your laugh made everyone else laugh alongside you. You will be dearly missed and forever remembered. Tan. Thank you, Tan. That was a great tribute. And now Lisa. I know. Lisa wrote, "When I went to visit Nan with my kids, she had these big slippers that were dogs, and she would kick her feet up and move them around like they were real dogs and make barking noises. My son always thought that was so funny, and he'd always be looking at her slippers, waiting for them to bark again." I have memories of my Nan taking me to the Royal Melbourne Show. I don't remember how old I was, but she really loved taking me into the cake hall and looking at all the winning cakes. I remember that we got to taste a couple, but being fruitcake, I wasn't too impressed. But she assured me they were very good. The show dogs was another favourite of hers. We would walk up and down the aisles trying to steal pats from all these beautiful pampered pooches. When Nan was staying in the aged care facilities for respite over the few years, I would try and visit. I remember visiting her with Jackie at one of the facilities, and we were sitting around in the lounge area, and Nan was telling all the others there, "These are my granddaughters. She was so proud that you'd come to visit." She was always happy to see us. Another time I went to visit by myself, and we were sitting in the lounge area, and she says to me, "That woman drives me crazy." I was just dying as that lady was only about 3 metres away. I was trying to whisper, "Nan, shh, she can hear you." She just didn't care though, and that really did make me laugh. I'd often try and take her out to a local cafe for coffee and cake. Cake was her favourite. I remember Jackie and I decided we could all walk down the street to a cafe. I wasn't too sure that Nan would be able to walk that far, but we got her walker out and she was off. She was really using that walker until a few years ago, and we joked that she was running for the cake. Another memory I have is standing around the kitchen table and Nan entertaining all the grandkids with this magnet on the table. She had another magnet underneath that she used to move, the one on the top, but none of us kids knew. We thought she was magic when she would point the magnet on the table and tell it to move, and it did. This kept us entertained for hours. Thank you, Lisa. Lovely. And Jackie wrote, "When I think of Nan, I always imagine her laughing. She had such a great laugh, a big belly laugh, and she was smart. She always had the answers when we watched the game shows, and she could finish those big crossword puzzles from the paper, which was so impressive to a kid. I remember telling her that she would always be on my phone a friend list if I got stuck on a question. She always promised that when she won Tatslotto, she would take me to Disneyland. She never did hit the jackpot, but I think we had plenty of ventures without Disneyland anyway. We will miss you so much, Nan." Thank you, Jackie. Narala, you're right. Thank you.
So I'll start today by giving apologies for my dad, who can't be here with us, as I think he is still tied to the footy fence for acting up. So, sorry about that. No, unfortunately, the family from Queensland can't attend today, and they really did want to be here, but the restrictions are there. But I think that's kind of why Nan chose this time, because she would never want any bother. But Dad did want us all to wave and say hello. So, hello, Father. Today I want to thank Nan. I don't want to say goodbye. I want to say thank you. I want to thank Nan for looking after us when we were young, for being our surrogate mother when our mother wasn't around, for taking us all to our sporting events. Stuart to his cross-country, Anthony and Stuart to football, and me for my swimming, and always for being our number one advocate when we went. I know I wasn't very sporty, but I remember Nan taking me to a late night swimming event where I was representing the school in backstroke. I should let you know the only reason I was representing the school was because I was the only one who entered from the school. So I went, Nan took me, and it was at 7 o'clock at night. It was very late. And I came last, as surprising as that is. I came last, and I did not come last in my lane. Did end up on the other side of the pool. But at the end of it, she made me see how funny it was. And it wasn't a bad thing. It was, I made it that far, and she was really proud of me for getting in there. It doesn't matter that no one else from the school entered. But she always made us feel that we were number one, no matter where we came. Although Stuart was number one because he was very fast. I want to thank Nan for always taking us in, no matter what the circumstances. When we had nowhere else to go, she would always give us a roof over our head. Even when I was in my 20s and 30s, I could always count on Nan to let us in. And even Anthony, always, much to Tom's dismay, always had a place to stay. She'd always feed us, and her roast potatoes. And on a side note, if anyone knows how to make them the way she did, let me know, because they were delicious. I want to thank Nan for the fun she brought us when we were growing up. Even a day helping her clean her houses was one of the most fun days we had. Nan had a way of making it seem like we had the most important jobs when we helped her, and we took our utmost care in making sure it was done properly. And it certainly helped that these houses were amazing and there was lots of toys for us to play with. I want to thank Nan for teaching us the value of family, the Sunday trips to visit Nana Welsh, which we look forward to. I mean, there were the lollies that Nana Welsh gave us, and they certainly helped. But the day trips down to Frankston, which is now not a day trip, but it was when we were little. The Christmases and birthdays where we gathered the entire family of uncles, aunties, cousins. And we had good food and a lot of laughs. Though over the years, as we have grown and had our own families, people have moved away, these family events were treasured. And we do manage to get everyone together every now and then, and we still have all those laughs and we make more memories. In the traditions that Nan has set before us, I hope these continue for our children and their children after them. Probably don't wait for my wedding though, because I am going to be a crazy cat lady. I want to thank Nan for teaching us the value of friendship. For many years, I honestly believe that Auntie Jean, Auntie Joan and Auntie Mavis were Nan's sisters, never realising that they were just lifelong friends. I know that when they passed, they took a part of Nan with them, and she missed her friends dearly. It is this love for friends that I'll always remember, although Stuart may still think that they were all lesbians. I want to thank Nan for teaching us love lasts beyond death. Her love for Tyrone Power has never ended. Watching black and white movies of Tyrone Power will be cherished memories. And as I said to Auntie Betty recently, I like to think that they have a new daddy in the afterlife. And Nan went straight to meet Tyrone Power. I want to thank Nan for teaching us the importance of gift giving. Nan always put a lot of thought into her gifts, but now she is not here. I think we can agree some of them were god-awful. Or in the case of poor Nicole with her $1 or $2 that she got in her cards, sometimes not even worth being sent. But what we did learn was that no matter the gift, we should always be grateful for everything that's given to us because it's given with love. I want to thank Nan for teaching us the importance of laughter. Anyone who knows Nan will know she had a wicked sense of humour beneath that deceptively pure exterior. I'm reminded of a time when I brought one of my friends from interstate to meet Nan for the first time, and Nan said, "I've got this video to watch, and I just want to know if this is how you do your cleaning." She put this video on, and yes, it was a porno. And I remember being half horrified, but also thinking, this is where I get it from. I remember Nan cutting the jokes out of the paper and all the magazines to read to Michael when she had her calls with Dad and the kids in Queensland. And I know this is a memory that I spoke with Michael about recently, and he said that he got an envelope with all those jokes. So they'll stay with him forever. And I know I went with Nan to see David Strassman a number of times. She openly loved Teddy Bear and took him home, but secretly she loved Chuck Wood. And I know that he was her favourite. I also went with her to Daniel O'Donnell, so it wasn't all fun and games. Stuart also tells me a story of how Nan's humour had passed on to Tom. Well, Tom thinks he's funny. Tom offered Nan a hard-boiled egg with soldiers, and Nan tried to crack open a hard-boiled egg, but it wouldn't crack. She tried tapping it again and again, but nothing. This went on for a minute or so until Stuart finally had enough and said, "You know he's given you the kitchen timer." Well played, Tom. Well played. I want to thank Nan for keeping our minds sharp, and I think nearly everyone here will have at one point or another sat with Nan and done her That's Life and Take 5 puzzles in time for her phone calls with Auntie Elsie and getting those sent off every week. I want to thank Nan for teaching us how to burn the house down. E-cigs and stoves do not mix, and we're grateful for that lesson. I know Uncle Tom will be a little lost without Nan around to drive him mad, but never fear, Tom. Nan has taught us all a trick or two in our time, and we're more than happy to come over and open the door to all the salespeople and have new things connected to the house that you don't know about, or spend lots of time on the phone with telemarketers. You'll think she's still there. But most of all, I want to thank Nan for enriching our lives by being her. She may be gone physically, but I think the memory she has left us with will mean she'll always be with us.
Yes, good morning. I'd like to just touch on a few little stories that over the years I've had with Jean. I first met Jean in about 1965, I think, when I started courting Betty, and went into the house and said, "Oh yes, this is good, something different here." And so some of the little stories that Jean used to tell us all, and I think all in this room would have heard them, that when she was at Ascot Vale Primary School, one of her boys who was at the school said to her, "I'll take you down to Maribyrnong River at night time and show you the luminous ducks." And she said, "Oh, the luminous ducks, that'd be good. That'd be good to go and have a look at those." So down they go, and they're sitting on the bank, and it's dark, and there's no luminous ducks. And I think the young gentleman might have wanted to put a kiss on the cheek of Jeannie, but and I don't think Jeannie had any idea, or she was looking for the luminous ducks. But we never heard the end of that story, and I always used to pepper her about it, say what happened, and she would never have told me. So I just leave it to the imagination at that stage. So, when I was going down to Betty's to Marriott Street, and we'd time to leave, and we get to the front door and have a little of a kiss and a bit of a smooch, and the door was half shut, and then after 5 minutes, Betty and I'd start counting down, and we'd go 10, 9, 8, and we get to 1, and there'd be a cough. There's Nana standing on the other side of the door saying it's time to come in. And we got it down to a fine art in the finish. Every time we'd say, right now, and the cough would come, and in go Nana, in go Betty, and I'd go home. And it was quite funny, actually, every time. You know. So, and then they had a card night at Marriott Street on a Friday night, and you had to be in the good books to get into this card game, I tell you. So after a fair while, I got the invitation. I thought, oh, I'm in, sweetie, and I'm in with the daughter, and now I'm in with the card game. And so they'd start about 8 o'clock on a Friday night, and Betty'd go to bed, and everyone else would be in bed, and Mavis and Joan and Jean and George, of course, and I got the big invitation. So we'd be playing, and they smoking their cool cigarettes. Well, the whole place is full of smoke, and you could hardly see the cards. And you'd sit there, and it'd be 8 o'clock in the morning, and you're still playing. And no, it was quite funny. You just say, oh, well, I'm going home now, and see you later. They just play all night. It was 12 hours on the cards, and I just loved it. And used to drop Mavis off on the way home. And yeah, so that was something we used to look forward to. The trip at Corowa that Jenny touched on, we went to this motel and stayed there in Corowa. And there was a person, and I'm not very good on names, but his name was Laurie Jones, and he owned the motel, and he's also a farmer. And he was more of a farmer than he was a motel proprietor, because when we got there, he said, oh, hey, how's it all going? And how are you, love, to Jeannie? And he said, we're going down for a couple of schooners after love. You can come down the pub if you like. And he didn't know us, and he was a lovely bloke. And as we stayed there for a few days, he's mowing the lawn up the back of the motel, and Jeannie's got her undies out getting dried, and Laurie yells out, Jeannie, and she comes, what do you want, Laurie, what do you want? He said, I'm doing the croc dusting tomorrow, and I'm going to jump out the plane. Can I use your undies for a parachute? and she just laughed, you know, nothing, she didn't know I got around to Judy. She just laughed and said, there they are, you know where they are. And off went Laurie laughing and with his mower, and he gave her hell up there, but she just kept going at him, and he never got away with it. The kids, when Jackie and Lisa and Tanya were young, there was never any problem. And if Betty was working at Scots College, no, you've got to come, bring the kids around if you're going to play footy, or just bring the kids around any time. And sometimes I took them to my mum. Well, she'd get dirty on me for doing that. She said, no, you've got to bring them here first. Bring them here. So, you know, she just loved having those kids. And they used to play up terrible. They'd be running all over the place. And, you know, you think, oh, geez, I don't know why she wants them all day. But anyway, you know, you think, oh, yeah, well, she liked them. And anyway, that was somewhere to leave them. And so they stayed there. And another thing that happened, which was really good, and I've never ever heard of it much before. It would happen in different places. But Jono, when he was working, and he worked in South Melbourne, and often called into St Kilda when Tommy was working and George was working, and no one was there, and Jono would call in and have a cup of tea with Jean. And then Pato came down a couple of times from Swan Hill, and I said, where have you been? You rang me halfway down. You should have been in my place hours ago. Oh, I just went down to St Kilda to see Jean. And it was amazing, the two boys, and I'm actually really proud of them to do that, because a lot of son-in-laws don't sort of think of that. But no, they've done that on various occasions, and it was really good of that, and I really appreciate what they done there. And Jean loved it. Jean used to say, oh, the boys come down, Jono come down, or Pato called in to see me, and that was very good. And Tom, I know Jenny's touched on Tom, and we just like to say too, Tom, that it was hard. 7 years, hard gig, but he's seen it out and done everything he could, and it was very, very good. He had one incident when Nana got on the bus, and she had a big bruise on her arm, and she told the bloke, he said, how'd you get the bruise on your arm, Nana? And he said, oh, he pushed me over. And so she gets on the bus. Next minute, the window opens, and the old bloke about 80, you dirty mongrel, he said, you dirty mongrel, you pushed Jeannie over, you mongrel. And he said, what's going on here? So they're all giving it to him in the bus. They're all gone feral. And off goes the bus, and he said, what's happening here? So when the bus pulled up, he runs out again. He said, I'll see what's going on here. Well, they're still giving it to him when they pull up. And he said to Jeannie, when he got her off the bus, what's going on? She said, I told them you pushed me over. and they're all not happy with you. And I think that bloke never talked to Tom for the rest of his life, that old bloke. He just kept going. I'd just like to finish up with saying to Tanya, when we told her that Jean didn't have long to go and she was in Swan Hills, about a 4 or 5 hour drive, bang, she was in the car, she was on her way down. We said, don't come down because you won't get back out. No, in she comes, and she was a while, and she said, no, didn't tell us, she said, I'm going to Tom's place because he might want to come too. Tom didn't want to come up to that stage, and that was what he wanted to do. Tanya got up there about 11 o'clock at night, and because she's a nurse, she said to the nurse, well, I can come in. She's in palliative care. I can come in any time I like, if you know the rules. So the girl said, oh, well, I didn't know that rule, but anyway, you must be right. And she went in, and she had a radio or a tape player, and she said, you're holding Nan's hand, and she put the music on. It was going to be a nice Frank Sinatra song. Next minute, Hoochie Cooch come on. It went right through the whole hospital and it woke everyone up. But she turned that down pretty good. And the other nurse that was in there, she come from Kerrang, but she didn't know Tanya. But they were having a dance, and they had Nana up and shaking her hand. And there was not much of a smile there at that stage. But then she passed, and Tanya was with her. And that was good. Because there's a lot of people now that their parents pass, or their grandfathers or grandmothers, and you can't get near them. And that happened. We're very thankful to Tan for that happening. So to get out of there, I can't really tell people how she got back to Swan Hill because she's very tricky, though, I've got to say. She takes that after me, I think. Jean, we will miss you. We've all had a great time with you. You've been a lovely lady. You've helped a lot of people. There was people coming into your place. I remember from Richmond, some lady, she used to come in, I don't remember her name, and you'd help her and look after her and feed her kids. And that was the type of person you were. Just a beautiful lady that will not be forgotten in the family. Thank you.
Well done, Michael. Well done, everyone. So now let's take a moment and reflect on Jean's life with music and photos. Jean's family has chosen Louis Armstrong's What a Wonderful World to play whilst we show images of her life. Music, lyrics and photographs, they jog our minds and take us back to places and times we thought we had forgotten. So allow the music and the photos to bring forward your own memories of Jean and remember the good times you shared with her.
I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and you. friends shaking hands, saying how do you do? They're really saying I love you. I hear babies cry. I watch them grow. They learn much more than I ever knew. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Yes, I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see trees of green, red roses too. I've seen them bloom for me and you. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see skies of blue and clouds of white, the bright blessed day, the dark sacred night. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. The colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, are also on the faces of people going by. I see friends shaking hands, saying how do you do? They're really saying I love you. I hear babies cry. I watch them grow. They learn much more than I ever knew. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Yes, I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see trees of green, red roses too. I've seen them bloom for me and you. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see skies of blue and clouds of white, the bright blessed day,
Dwell not long upon my death in gloomy sadness. Rather, remember me as only you can. Recall me gladly and keep my story bright. What joy I have had in living. What joy I have had in loving you all. Ladies and gentlemen, this almost concludes the first chapter in our farewells to Jean, and I will ask that if you can do so comfortably, please stand now as we prepare to leave the chapel. Even though Jean's death has meant a physical break in the link of the chain that binds you to each other, the enduring impact of her life will still be evident when you speak her name. I hope it gives you comfort to remember that those we love are never really lost to us. We feel them in so many different ways. For Jean, it will be her devotion to her family, her great sense of humour, her love of cakes and cream, and her love for her home. Those things and more will always be remembered by you when Jean's name is mentioned, ensuring her memory will live on. And as you begin to move forward with your lives, remember to be pleased for the joys that filled Jean's life, her family and friends, and how happy she was to be surrounded by her loved ones, sharing a cuppa, a chat, and a laugh. Be thankful also for the legacies Jean leaves behind. Cherish the memory of her concerns and her care, her vitality and involvement, especially in conversation and deeds. And if you can learn from Jean's experience, if you can profit from her example, if you can live a little better for having known her, then this will give continuing purpose to her life and be a living memorial to her. May you find comfort and richness and example in your memories.